Welcome into the Astrology of 2025. My name is Gracey with Northern Astrology. I will be your host through this panel of brilliant astrologers that I have gathered from all over the place to join us to have this conversation about the historic and quite groundbreaking astrology of the year ahead. So January 1st, kicking off the nodes being at 0 degrees Aries and 0 degrees Libra, which means it's a fresh start for all of us. And we will go from January 1st until the end of March in the first quarter, and then it'll be broken up in 3-month segments from there. So I am very excited to bring you this project. It's been a little bit in the making for a while, so it is something that I look forward to bringing you and letting you guys get to know the other astrologers. We've got Alessia from Life Through Spirit, Jamal, the Night of Sages, and we have Amanda from Astro Healing Council, and then of course yours truly. I will be joining them to kind of moderate and help paint the picture of what we're going to be seeing for the times ahead. And I really like to be able to showcase what people are going to be experiencing through a visual type of workbook of sorts. So luckily for you, we have also curated a book that is available on Amazon and also my website in the ebook form for you guys to experience this fever dream of a year ahead. So I am very excited to bring this to you. And without further ado, the Astrology of 2025. Welcome into the Astrology of 2025 Roundtable. I am your host, Gracey with Northern Astrology. I am joined today by not only my Christmas tree in the background, but by 3 incredibly talented astrologers that you might know from Twitter or YouTube or all the other social media platforms. But I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves, starting with Alessia. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Alessia.
I'm Amanda. I go by Sophia Nova online.
Hi, I'm Jamal. You may know me as Young Desperado on Twitter.
All right. So these are our panelists. Our roundtable is officially starting, and we're going to just kick it off. Like, very first part of the year, January 1st, the nodes will be at 0 degrees Aries and 0 degrees Libra. This is going to be what the ancients call a karmic reset. And this is what us modern people call simply the 0 point of astrology, and the nodes getting back to almost like the reset button. And this is kind of like one of the first New Year's days that it's going to feel like an actual new year. What do you guys think?
I also realized I didn't introduce my handle.
Just jump on in.
Go by Life Through Spirit online. Yeah, I would agree that it definitely feels like an official new year when usually I go by the spring equinox. Yeah, it feels like a fresh start, clean slate.
I think also with Pluto in Aquarius, now that it's finally in the sign for good, it feels like a new era has begun. So this is a really good synchronicity with this happening with the nodes at the same time. So yeah.
And I would say the good thing also is like the nodes are going to be making a positive aspect to Pluto. Also, that's a cardinal season when we're in Capricorn season. So it just feels like the energy is right for us to kind of start making new strides as well and more progress that actually seems like it's going to have some kind of long-term impact.
I absolutely love that. And we have, starting off at the very beginning of the year, quite kind of like a jam-packed schedule. So we can kind of talk about how Mercury will be leaving the post shadow at 22 degrees Sagittarius. I know this degree very specifically as the foreigner degree in the Sabian symbols, and it is represented by a Chinese laundry. So naturally, I'm like, please just make sure your laundry is done and your rooms are cleaned up. That's really the one thing I have to offer with that transit. And then jumping into the second part of the 2nd of January is going to be Venus in Pisces. And I know we have quite the display in the workbook for the Astrology of 2025 that we have put our minds together and really teamed up well and brought a lot of information into this workbook. So if you guys are not aware that this roundtable is also supporting an incredible workbook that I failed to mention at the beginning as well, that we are putting together, we have an accompanying workbook that you can walk through these transits with us. And so Venus and Pisces is going to be a very visual, fun place to start. And we have this transit going on until February. So it's not just like something that happens and we only feel its effects for a few days. When the planets ingress into a new sign, we feel that, especially with Mercury, for right about a month.
We also have Venus entering its pre-shadow at 24 degrees of Pisces on January 28th. The retrograde will be in March, so that'll be 42 days between Aries and Pisces, but that's when the pre-shadow will begin for Venus in Pisces.
So will that kind of cloud Venus and Pisces usual kind of like fairy-like Tinkerbell energy? Do you think that that's going to
Oh
be
yeah,
making an impact?
especially with Neptune. Tinkerbell, I was like, oh yeah, Venus, Neptune, that's Tinkerbell for sure. Go ahead.
No, I was just like, I really want to kind of expand on why that is important for Venus and Pisces because this transit, while Venus is preparing for retrograde, what that really kind of feels like, especially for some Venus ruled people, which we might have a couple experts on in this chat.
Yeah, if Venus is going to be your time lord, or if you're ruled by Venus in some way, or you have placements between 24 Pisces and 10 degrees of Aries, that is likely to be obvious as it manifests in your life. But yeah, I feel like as Venus moves over Neptune in the pre-shadow period, we might be running into some type of delusional, idealistic image of someone, perhaps a female. Glamour, if you're on the the good side of this, glamour is a really amazing thing. So maybe you're working on a project where you have to get in like full costume or makeup or something like that. But as it moves into Aries, it's going to be a completely different vibe, and maybe your priorities will shift to like, hey, I got to do something for me, and I don't know what I was thinking back there, but yeah, I got to change my priorities up really quick. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that
Yeah,
transit?
especially because Venus rules over connections such as like friendships and whatnot and love. It might be already starting to, how those connections are. It might be taking a look at your boundaries within those connections. But I'm also curious to see like the colors that are trending or favored fashion wise, makeup wise, while Venus is in Pisces, if they're over the top, sort of, if there's like any discourse around that. Um, and I generally think it's still like a supportive time for art and poetry, but maybe perhaps in the shadow period as well, it leans more towards the duality of Pisces that isn't all love and lay as well, because it can get deep and there's almost like a darker side to Pisces as well. And so maybe the art that you're creating or the poetry that you're writing about isn't just um, all glitz and glamour and positive, but also talking about the pain that's also involved in like love and life.
I really liked what you were saying about the darker side of Pisces because it's interesting because to me, Pisces, I've said before, I feel like Pisces is the sign of victimization as well, which I think we've kind of been seeing that already play out with Saturn and Pisces, right? We've been seeing a lot of stuff in the media about victimization of popular figures or even with conflicts that are happening, let's say outside of the US without getting too specific. So I think there is this sense of compassion, empathy. That's one side of Pisces, but there's also the victimization or the aching to service or to serve for less egotistical reasons. And with Neptune, it's kind of easy to get really lost because boundaries usually don't exist where Neptune is, for one, which, like you said, could lead to inspiration creatively, but also confusion or like disillusionment. I think the one thing that's kind of also interesting is that you have the North Node also kind of in that same neighborhood with Venus and Neptune, and then Venus will move on into Aries, like you were saying as well, Amanda. So I feel like to me, it's almost like a story of like with Venus and Neptune, like victimization, but also inspiration. And there's something karmic or like the timing seems fated for things to come out about like maybe the darker sides of that. And with Venus and Aries, it's almost kind of like there's a need to take action. And then the retrograde is like, okay, we can take action, but let's first go back to what does empathy mean? What does compassion mean? Maybe we collectively have missed the mark on showing that for, let's say, popular figures or, whatever comes out in the media at that time. And then that's going to lead to maybe a different kind of mobilization, Aries, on how we approach relationships, as opposed to, let's say, jumping right in at appearances or, things like that.
That's an incredible point. And when you really focus on the lighter side of Pisces, you're kind of missing the depths that it offers. And Pisces is the death of the zodiac. And what we are seeing with Neptune going from Pisces into Aries, we're seeing a rebirth of so much already. But with these more personal planets, with not only Venus and Pisces, but we're also going to be seeing that trine retrograde in Cancer. And that's going to be the next kind of stop for our January is Mars retrograde in Cancer. And then it will station direct February 22nd at 17 degrees Cancer, right on my ascendant. I have no problem telling you guys that. If there's anyone that's going to be victimizing me or attacking me, it's going to be my Mars opposition happening at that time. It's not going to be anyone in the community, that's for sure. But having those energies, like the heavy water within Capricorn season, is not going to be something that feels comfortable. And I know the death degrees of Pisces sounds like a lot scarier than it really is, but it's like death to those things that you have been, people get mad about saying delusional with Neptune. It's like you're not a real astrologer if you use delusional with Neptune. And it's like, okay, well, describe a better way to put it when you're talking about Neptune. And I challenge you because trust me, I have tried. And if I could be anything but delusional, it would be great. But when you have those kind of things happening, like you look to the Sabian symbols, and the 29 degrees of Pisces is one of the most beautiful degrees in the entire Sabian symbols, and it's about light passing through a prism creating a rainbow. And to me, that I just got goosebumps. That's death. It's like all we are is light passing through something that reflects into a vision of something else, and in this case a rainbow. But the next degree of Pisces, the final degree of the zodiac, is Pisces 30 degrees, and it's a boy that has idolized this rock his whole life because it looks like a man, and then he slowly grows up to realize that he is that rock, and he has grown in to be that idealization of the man from his childhood. So it's very much about idolizing people and breaking that delusion that other people are here to save you when it's all about yourself. And that's where I think all of this water going into fire energy is going to be breaking up a lot of Capricorn's I would say honorary water sign Capricorns to me are some of the most emotional people I've ever met. They just don't acknowledge their emotions. So when they go up the cliff and then they jump back into the ocean to try and like go up a higher cliff the next time, to me that's very water sign like behavior. So having all this happen, and then having that Mars retrograde kind of pushing all of the Pisces energy to be like, have you really done all this work? Have you really done all the clearing and all the emotional kind of like battleground work that is going to come with all this Pisces energy? So, with that being said, Mars retrograde back into Cancer. How are you all feeling about this? Because I know that we, while filming this, are going through the depths of Mars in Leo station retrograde. So, please feel free to jump in.
I have to start because Mars retrograded near the degree of my ascendant, and then it is going to station direct at 17, which is opposite to my sun. So I have my ascendant and my sun both at both ends of this. And so far so good. I'm okay so far. Luckily no injuries. I was worried about back injuries or something like that, like going to the gym and doing too much, but so far so good. We'll see what happens, but yeah, I mean, identity wise, I'm changing. I'm becoming a student again. And as far as the 12th house stuff, I haven't processed it yet because it hasn't gone back there. So we'll see what happens when I get to have that regress back into Cancer, which is going to be January 6th, which is the day before my birthday. So this is all very personal for me.
Well, sorry to ask such a personal question.
Man, I don't know what's up. Like, I guess Mars is my, is a benefic that is nicer than Saturn. So I'm a night person, so Mars is chill with me. So I'm happy that it's just not the other malefic right now.
I'm getting rocked by both. I like what you touched on, Gracie, about, the emotions and whatnot, and with Mars being retrograde or entering into Cancer and then, stationing retrograde. Got to be careful of burnout. I would say that's another thing, especially like emotional burnout in the sign of Cancer for sure.
That's a real thing. And I know every natal Mars and Cancer is like just cooking up a storm and getting back to like their foundation of their roots and like just getting back to feeding themselves well, hibernating well. So it's okay. Like the other thing that I really want to stress is just because this new year, new me energy with the nodes going back to zero and kind of like being a reset clock, it does not mean you have to do anything. This is also very much in our side of the world, cold as hell outside, and not a lot of things are happening, but it's okay to kind of like take stock and go within.
Yeah, so I think right now, like a different approach, or should say when Mars enters Cancer, a different approach, a different speed, like a different pace is really important, and going inwards and really paying attention to the body, which is such a powerful messenger, and saying like, what is my body telling me? Am I sort of cut off from the body, which is Mars cutting, What is it signaling to me in terms of how I want to approach things? Do I need to rest more? Do I need to put up more boundaries in terms of like where I'm spending my energy and where I'm investing my emotions?
It looks like that's going to be opposite Mercury and Capricorn. Because, like, if we haven't had enough fun on the Capricorn Cancer axis in the last few years, let's just jump back in there and, have that kind of shift into, going from Mercury and Sagittarius, which is a very bountiful, very explorative, very curious type energy. Having that being retrograde for a little bit has been definitely feeling like things have been stifled creatively a little bit. And now Mercury and Capricorn, I feel like it is, if you were looking at like the moon phases, like the best time to act after a new moon, that first quarter moon. So it's kind of like a week later after the first of the year on the 8th, Mercury going into Capricorn. I feel like if there are projects or there are things to launch, or if you do want to do something or start something new, I think Mercury and Capricorn would give you the discipline, or at least the mental discipline to help with that. Being opposite Mars retrograde and Cancer can feel a little bit stifling, but you're going to have aspects because everything exists all at once in astrology. And no matter what, something is making an aspect to something else and amplifying it. So there's no escaping the amplification of the celestial bodies in the sky.
Yeah, it's often you can't escape it anyway because it's the situation that you're in, it's the circumstance you're in regardless. So you might as well make the best of it and make the most of it.
Amen. Mercury and Capricorn, can we get some thoughts on that? Or did we want to touch on Mars retrograde and Cancer still? The floor is open.
Oh, I just wanted to say that, just in general, like whenever we have like an abundance of water energy, like in the sky, like with Venus, and then Mars as well, usually collectively we are a lot more inwardly focused during a time like that. It is not like Aries energy or Leo or Gemini where it's super extroverted and let's socialize, let's start a whole bunch of stuff. We're kind of like reeling from things and trying to kind of like internally deal with whatever we're, circumstance, like you were saying, at that time. And I think Mercury, like let's say opposing Mars, usually Mercury Mars combination is like the ultimate strategist, right? You have the mind and the willpower working in tandem. And when they're opposite, or let's say square, there's sometimes like the overestimation of one or the other, or it's kind of like Mercury saying, yes, I thought of that, and Mars is saying, I can't do that, or vice versa. So with the opposition, there could be this thing of feeling like you have to take action on, let's say, new information or information that you've been sitting on for a long time, but maybe the timing isn't right, or the flow, which is Mars and Cancer too. The flow doesn't feel quite so comfortable or so steady, or maybe it just doesn't feel well thought out. Or the action doesn't feel well executed, even though the thought process has been long and kind of simmering, or slow and steady, with Mercury and Capricorn as well. But it is a cardinal energy once again. So, with Cancer and Capricorn, it's usually we're dealing with family business, or we're dealing with our interpersonal relationships, and let's say a financial situation, possibly with Cancer. So there could just be this thing of us having to start something all over again, you know, in our relationships that has either a long lasting impact or something that is dealing with, let's say, inconsistencies. That's also Mars in Cancer. Things are inconsistent. They start and then they stop. There's no real flow. Or you know, it's ruled by the moon, so it's kind of like a circular or secular kind of situation as well.
That's definitely an interesting look at things too, because you have the ability to kind of be like, yeah, Mercury and Capricorn is this like timekeeper. It's very aware of how much effort and how much time it's going to require to be taking things. And then Mars retrograde is like, all right, take more time, take more effort, take extra just in case. And that that kind of leads into a little bit of what I would say the North Node and Pisces is going to be bringing us as well. So, if it's okay with you guys, I just wanted to talk about that because shifting of the nodes, would anyone like to cover what that means collectively? Because as a moon ruled person and seeming how this is my nodal return, I feel as though it's going to be a blast, but it not always feels that way.
I feel like when the nodes shift, it is going into like a set of signs that correspond to an area of your life. And it's asking you to look at that part of your life and say, do I like the direction that this is going? And it's giving you an opportunity over 18 months to say, hey, this isn't working. And this could be conscious or it could be unconscious. It can be, it's happening to you. It feels like that. Like, oh, I have to change my job. Oh, I have to do this. I have to change everything. Um, but if you know that it's happening in the astrology and you're like, okay, well, these things are fated, you know, essentially, the nodes can be associated with, you know, your life direction, your path forward, where you're meant to go. So, you know, they're the points of the eclipse as well. So they bring fated energy. And yeah, it's just giving us a new opportunity to bring new energy into that space and let go of things that no longer serve us.
I love that.
Yeah, we're definitely shifting away from such a heavy assertiveness and individuality sort of focus with the Aries Libra axis with the current nodes, and then moving towards more of a focus on like healing, spirituality, intuition, health, and service with the Pisces-Virgo axis. And I'm curious to see where the hyper focus is in terms of health and service.
Yeah, we've had an insane few years with the medical community and the paranoia basically around the medical community. So I really do feel like the South Node and Virgo, seeming how it's an energy I live with every day, it is very much cleaning the spaces around you, organizing them to make them work for your life. So the next 18 months aren't slowing you down. Like the more that I read things about how not taking care of the space around you is succumbing to the idea of loving drama in your life because you love when things go wrong. So naturally, you're not going to take care of things in, the present so you can prepare for the future type energy. It's because you love the drama of it. And I'm like, damn, I don't like all my Pisces energy being called out here that I love drama, all that squaring my Gemini moon. It's fine. But like knowing that collectively that we're going to be going to a place where alternative healing is definitely going to be on the table, slowing down and doing the woo-woo shit that people might make fun of you for, or being publicly okay with calling yourself an astrologer. It's literally things as minute as that I feel like can make a difference with this transit.
I
Yeah.
love all of what you were saying about the healing. I think frequencies and vibrations are going to be used a lot more in health settings, or I hope so. Um, Sound healing. I feel like that is very Piscean, just like energy vibrations. Yeah, I feel like that's next.
I have those
Yeah.
frequencies going all the time. So I get roasted by like, why are you living in the future? What is the alien music behind you? And then of course you guys appreciate it. So I'm glad.
It's definitely appreciated. I was also wondering if there might be a shift moving away from the spiritual individualism, because until June 2025, the North Node will be answering to Jupiter and Gemini, and there might be more sharing ideas and talking to each other in terms of spiritual ideas and beliefs and whatnot.
I think that's needed, and having a place where it's grounded and not just people kind of like spiraling information or feeding little tidbits or not clickbaity things, but like I feel like we've had our share of people wanting to be right about everything. And the predictions are so fun when you can incorporate them in a teachable way. But when it's like, I feel as though things have just kind of become a competition when like you're looking at the collective things where people are like, well, I was right about this and you need to subscribe to what I say because clearly I am the one that is having all the answers. And I kind of feel like there's going to be a shift into like, we don't know shit. No one knows anything about anything, and that's okay.
I
Especially with
hope so.
Neptune. Yeah, Neptune as well. It's going to be right there. And I think it'll be a collective, none of us know. And that's why we're sort of like consulting each other, like, hey, we need to rethink things because
Yeah,
this is
astrologers
crazy.
need astrologers too. It's like we're not just out here knowing everything. Like if we had that ability to just know stuff for ourselves and just have no blindness to our own charts, that would be great. But almost every astrologer I know has another person that they still consult with.
You need someone to check your blind spots, in my opinion. And I think the word spiritual is almost used like a badge of honor sometimes, or different words within like the spiritual realm. And I think admitting like, oh, I actually don't know this, or being willing to sort of change your beliefs when presented with new information is important.
Absolutely. That's to me the biggest mark of intelligence is being able to keep an open mind and be able to admit when you're wrong or when maybe you just didn't know any better and you weren't fully informed. That's okay.
Yeah. I'm also thinking that holistic healing and holistic view of health with the North Node in Pisces is going to become a bigger thing as well.
Symbolism and all sorts of just getting back to the earth, I feel like. And it's not necessarily a death of anything, but I do feel like if you want to get really into it, there's books on the medicine men, and it's about the Rockefeller kind of switch from natural medicine into these petroleum based medicines that are kind of keeping the world sicker than they need to be. And I think a lot of the things that I've experienced with the health care community in the last few years being my father's caretaker is like you really do have to stand up for yourself and not let people push you around and not let people tell you that you need to just inject yourself with X, Y, and Z and you'll be fine. I think it's kind of like when you're watching TV. If you guys watch TV, sometimes I watch it when it's live and it's on sports stuff. And I hear these pharmaceutical commercials. They're like, yeah, this will go away, but then you have 80 more problems in the background. And I really think that people are going to be trying to get back to natural medicine because of that.
The great thing is the trust is gone. I feel like the pandemic, regardless of what you ended up believing at the very end, we are all spooked and we're like, dude, what? So, like, if you can't trust the people that you thought you could trust, now what? Like, we have to just go back to our roots. What did we know? What did grandma know? What did her grandma teach her? Like, find the old recipes, do all that.
I love that. Find the old recipes. That feels like such a full moon and Cancer vibe too, because that's the next kind of thing that we were talking about. Aless, did you want to add anything to that? I know that a lot of your rituals and a lot of the things that are part of this workbook are very centered around taking care of oneself, doing it in practical, approachable ways. By no means is this any medical advice at all, you guys, but this is advice to connect back to yourself and back to the earth. So, Alessa, do you want to expand on any of that and how that can be beneficial to the body and spiritual self?
Yeah, and thank you for the disclaimer. I'm always doing that where I'm like, this is not medical advice. Yeah, I think this is going to help you nourish yourself on a mind, body, soul level. And I think we've been so disconnected from the body for such a long time, which, is a good segue into that full moon in Cancer. But yeah, it just helps you pour back into yourself. And that sort of helps with if you're doing any service to others or your community or in your family, whatever, you got to make sure that you're pouring into your cup first, and then you can pour back into those around you, which is so important.
So I do have to say, just because I want to make a little bit of a lighter note, because we did get pretty intense there for a second. This full moon in Cancer, for the people that have seen the workbook via ebook form or the physical form, this is like a very strange thing that came through. That was like the degree, the karmic degree of this lunation is a woman and two men, or a man and two women cast away on a small island. With all the Venus energy, the Mars retrograde energy, everything kind of coming to, it's like everything being unearthed in matters of the heart and matters of love and a matter of possibly behind closed doors. And I feel as though possibly relationships being unearthed where there's like multiple people involved in them, or some sort of scandal could be happening around this full moon, just because a moon ruled by a moon is terrifying to me as someone ruled by a moon. I'm like, we are not allowed to govern ourselves.
This full moon is happening on my Chiron, so
Once again, it's a personal attack. You're like, I am absolved from this one.
so I'm
Is,
like, oh, fun.
isn't this full moon also trine Neptune as well?
Yes, this one will be, and it's like I think anything where it's in the same sign, I think it can be trine. So I'm not one to be like super stickler with the orbs and everything else, but yeah, Neptune will be right at like I think 28 or 29.
It's at
Yeah.
27, Moon
What is
trine
that?
Neptune
See,
27.
we got the stats master over here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't, I always say sometimes to like clients, like I don't really like Mars Neptune so much. Well,
Thanks,
and I'll
Jamal. I
say
have
the
it natally.
well, no, no, no. I'll say the positive thing about that aspect is that there is this sense of like blending willpower with imagination and actually coming up with a tangible result. However, there is sometimes like a trickster kind of energy. Like Mars and Neptune is almost like Mars and Pisces, Mars and Gemini, even Mars and Sagittarius, Mars and Virgo. Like there's this mutable energy. So it's almost like there's two things kind of happening simultaneously sometimes. And then I always say, like, with Mars Neptune for men, it's like it's never quite what it looks like. It may seem like it's one way, but then it's like you get a little more clarity and you're like, oh, it wasn't like that at all, actually. So I do think Mars Neptune can also be confusion with willpower or asserting yourself, especially when Mars is retrograde for one, and in a sign that it doesn't like. And Gracey, like you hit the nail on the head. Like full moons, they are illumination. Something is going to be unearthed, revealed. Something hits a turning point, and when you have Mars retrograde, it's almost like the old baggage comes up to it's like when shit hits the fan. It's like this has been simmering for like a year, but now is the time that I'm really angry about it, and now we're going to do something about it.
I was also going to mention intuition and like triple checking your intuition and what's coming through with that connection there. And maybe, if you feel called to act, do your thing, but maybe you don't. Maybe you sit on it for just a second and see if what you're sort of intuitively picking up on is what it is.
I feel
That is
like
smart.
the impulse to act is going to be so strong due to the emotional intensity that, utilize Neptune to get it out. Like maybe, I don't know, go online and tell like a story time, but it's like anonymous. Do something weird where it's like, it's me, it's, I'm asking for a friend type thing. Like go online and vent, maybe anonymously, or like turn on some music, make a song about it. Do a meditation, like read some meditations, I don't know. But do all of that before you do something you may regret, I feel.
Yeah. There is a moon ritual inside the workbook if you want to turn to that first, that can provide a sense of comfort and security before burning it all to the ground.
What? That's so practical. How dare you?
Capricorn.
I love it. And that's, I mean, we have this full moon and we kind of have some time to breathe. I'm not saying that it's like free of aspects. Of course, astrology slows down for no one, but we are talking about mostly the major aspects with this conversation. So the next thing on the docket is Aquarius season. So as I only have one placement in Aquarius, but a couple 11th house placements, I feel as though Aquarius energy is within all of us in our veins. It helps us carry the energy from our heart, which is ruled by Leo, out into the body and filter through. And so I feel like we all collectively feel this like aloofness the moment that the sun goes into Aquarius, like, I'm above this now. Fuck off kindly.
Well, it's going to be conjoining Pluto at 1 degree, right as Aquarius season begins. So, oh, and that thing that's going on the same day as the ingress and all of that, politically, we won't have to get into it. But a lot of big changes going on a big scale, on a personal scale, inner, outer, just lots of things to reckon with. Um, Pluto is always, about things that come up, things that are dug up, things that were hidden, things that you discovered. You could think of it as like buried treasure, which is fun. You could think of it as investigative reporting. Um, and then there's some other things, that you got to stay hush hush about, a lot of the things that are not necessarily legal. That's my take on Pluto.
That's a great way to put it. The things that are not necessarily legal.
Speaking of, did you guys know, or I don't know if you guys have read that the day that the sun ingresses into Aquarius, which is the 19th, that's actually the day that they're saying that TikTok is supposed to be banned. Well, as of right now, and we're in
Very
Wow.
good
December
point.
right now. But if it hasn't been bought by someone or sold, I believe, the
Mhm.
ban will go into effect on this date. So I think that being a sun conjunct Pluto in an air sign, that's kind of like, wow,
Very
like
spot
that's kind
on.
of, and it's ruled by what, Saturn in Pisces, which is all about Pisces is definitely about calling to serve, and fantasy, which I think is kind of fitting for TikTok. So it'll be interesting to see if they actually hold up with banning it actually, and if so, I think that would be very Sun Pluto.
Incredibly. Incredibly. That would be, yeah, we're just going to take away this network that has been built basically on user interactions, the amount of people that are rich because of that platform or that app, the amount of people that unfortunately have a platform because of that app, number of people that do have a platform. I mean, there's so many people that I feel like emerged through, like we did reference the pandemic. Honest to God, it still feels like it just happened yesterday. I have no concept of time, like to understand the mental like reset that happened for the general public, the people that either were told that they were essential and then had to go back to work, or the people that were told, screw you, we don't need you, and stay away, and then had their whole lives ripped from them. We're now witnessing kind of a time to, I feel like, get back to that power to the people, power to the collective energies, the more that we can shift from like the individual, like we mentioned, the individual kind of autonomy part. I think it's good that we established boundaries. I think it's great that people started standing up for themselves. I feel like everyone grew a backbone with the North Node in Aries, and now it's time to really see where that like shows up and how we've learned from that, because Pisces and Aquarius are not the little aliens and small cuddly creatures that you think they are. They are incredibly strong leaders. They are incredibly vicious when they want to be, and they know how to get you. They can like, I mean, it'll be, and it's kind of like Vedic astrology too. Like they can specifically tell you like a goat's gonna walk across your path at 2:54 p.m. this day, and it'll turn around and gore you in the leg. And I'm like, how did you know that? And it's like, well, because we're so specialized. And I think a lot of specialists and a lot of people who have been maybe not as received well, I think we're going to see a lot of public figures talking about UAPs. We're going to be seeing talk about out of body experiences. Hospice nurses have been like rising to fame on TikTok. So that's kind of cool because they talk about the death experience and what they can share with that. And so a lot of them have gotten book deals from it. I follow very obscure people, not on TikTok, but other platforms. I'm so old that I watch TikToks posted on other platforms and then I finally get to them 6 months later. So that's where I'm at with it. But I really do think that there's something to be said with this Aquarius season shift. I do feel like it actually does feel like a new kind of reign of power, not talking about America's leadership, but a new reign of power is coming back into our veins type energy with this. And then with the same day we have Mercury going into Aquarius, we also have a new moon in Aquarius, which is double alien energy, I feel like. So I know that there's a lot to unpack with the Aquarius season starting and then also that happening. So I'll leave it open to the floor.
I have to step in and say that the Great Conjunction in 2021 December solstice was at 0 degrees Aquarius. Um, so I feel like there could be callbacks to what was happening during that time, which was, the rollout. I hate to say it, but it's the rollout of the vaccine. I feel like that could be a conversation that we have to talk about, perhaps.
Absolutely. And I think that you can't talk about medical advancement and furthering things in the future if you don't talk about where we came from. And I remember so much of that, like it was yesterday. And as someone that had been suffering through autoimmune conditions, I was one of the people that everyone was yelling at, like, you're a terrible person for not getting this. So it's like, I know that we could go into that for days, but I think that the parts of what we learned from then coming back up as themes, that's very interesting because that was definitely a time where the public, I felt like, was definitely waking up to the idea of like, hey, all this power is with us. Like, we outnumber them a lot more than you think. So I'm definitely curious to see how the world rises to the challenge. And maybe it's with more empathy than would be expected with Aquarius energy. But I think regardless, knowing that people suffered at the hands of anything that is man-made is hard to stomach. For, I mean, all my Pisces placements wants to save everyone. I'd move everyone into my house if I could. And I had no room to function, but that's just kind of like that Pisces energy. So having, Venus and Pisces during this time, the North Node in Pisces, and then having Aquarius also right there being like, hey, yeah, we're going to have the warm and fuzzies, and we're also going to have the darkness of this Piscean energy, but we're also going to have this new frontier that we don't really know where it's going or where it's going to be, landing us. But the faith in it all is wild.
Yeah. And with Mercury being in Aquarius, it's answering to Saturn in Pisces, which is answering to Jupiter in Gemini. And so I'm wondering if there might be more questions than sort of answers during that period as well.
That feels like Wizard of Oz energy, like man behind the curtain. If Jupiter and Gemini is the one answering the question, oh God, yeah, we're gonna have a lot more questions and we'll have answers. That's for damn sure. Jamal, did you
And
want to touch on that?
something interesting too is that I always note the time when the sun trines Jupiter, which will kind of happen somewhat during like a little bit, I think, after the new moon, but that is an aspect of the new moon's making. There is a trine to Jupiter. So there is this sense of like optimism or renewed faith. Even though Jupiter does not do so well in Gemini, but what I would like to think is that Jupiter, while it's been retrograde, it's an internalized change or an internalized awakening or expansion. Let's say with Mercury kind of in the driver's seat. So it's like your mindset, the information that you take in, how you process information. And I think during the direct phase, it's been a lot of, I don't want to say propaganda, but that is a Gemini thing. There is this thing of kind of like propaganda. And Jupiter obviously doesn't do well with propaganda, because it's kind of like if the truth can be twisted, tweaked to fit a certain narrative, then where do you gain wisdom from that, right? So I think that's something that's been addressed during this retrograde phase. And then I think Aquarius season, there's almost like this newfound optimism or attitude about the internal changes that we've collectively been going through. And I think what's also interesting is that Aquarius season starts off also with Venus conjunct Saturn, also in Pisces as well. So there is an eye for being practical about resources, money, things like that. And I know, like we talked a little bit about Venus being like in its shadow period before it'll go into Aries, but usually money matters are said to be really great when Venus is in Pisces, or let's say, or even Libra or Taurus, like, but the retrograde phase is usually not the best time for money. So I think that's going to be something that's going to come up as well. And then I guess the last thing I'll say about that is that it's interesting that the Jupiter Pluto trine didn't really exactly culminate in something significant, right? Since we've had the conjunction in, what was it, 2020. I believe we also had the trine more recently with Jupiter and Taurus, and then Pluto and Jupiter both shifted into air signs. So it's kind of felt like this particular time period has not been the most notable for a collective shift of wealth. So I think that's kind of interesting that we were talking about TikTok. And Jupiter and Pluto will not trine closely again like it did back in, let's say, May of this year, but they are trine by sign when Jupiter starts going direct. So I feel like that's something interesting to kind of note as well.
That's incredibly interesting because air sign energy is refreshing to me, and yet it can be like getting whiplashed. So these transits are going to be, I feel, a lot about finding that like grounding energy and finding something to hold on to, while, you know, the possibilities for just galactic downloads, I feel like, are insane during this time too.
I want to also say January 23rd, interestingly enough, 23 degrees of Cancer, Taurus, Capricorn. Mars is going to sextile Uranus, both retrograde. 23 degrees, Cancer, Taurus. Mercury opposes Mars at 23, Capricorn, Cancer, and then Mercury trines Uranus, all three in a row. 23 degrees, Capricorn, Taurus. So if you have anything at 23, you're getting hit by that combo. And in any of those signs, again, Cancer, Taurus, Capricorn. So yeah, this is like a combination of like unexpected. It could be, luckily this is a supportive aspect between Mars and Uranus. So it's not necessarily an accident, which is like a harsh aspect, but this could be more like a helpful surprise to take action with. And then with Mercury opposing Mars, just be careful of acting without all the information, or acting too soon. Like Mercury and Capricorn, you want to, make sure you have all the information and you're acting like being mature about the situation as much as possible before you act. And yeah, you're going to be led to feel very impulsed with that Uranus. So just a heads up for if you have that 23 degree in any of those signs on the 23rd, nonetheless.
That's amazing.
Oh,
That's known in degree theory as the degree of astrologers and astrology and like the occult and divination tools. So very cool.
I know we also talked a little bit before we actually started recording about time lords and things like that. So I think one thing also that's kind of interesting, I just kind of thought about this too as we were all just talking now. During Aquarius season, we'll have the sun and Mars both in, signs that they don't really like. The sun does not really like Aquarius all that much. Mars does not like Cancer all that much, right? But the weird thing is, and in Jupiter too, we have Jupiter also in a sign it doesn't really like. So for, let's say, people who are, day charts, right? The sun, Jupiter, not really in great shape. Saturn's kind of neutral, I guess, in Pisces, but Sun and Mars are not really in great shape either. So for the night chart people, it's interesting how it'll come up with Venus being exalted during this time. And then, the Sun, Mars, and Jupiter really are like, can't get their act together in the signs that they're in. So I feel like that's going to be an interesting thing to see as well, because I think sometimes when planets are stronger by sign, the energy manifests so much easier. Like you can kind of see someone with an exalted sun like a mile away. You probably see their accomplishments before you actually see them, right? Or even an exalted Mars, you see their actions before you really get to see them. So I feel like that's going to be interesting to see. And then at some point, we're going to see Venus eventually move into Aries too. So it's almost like for a while, we're going to have the planets not so great by sign. And I think we had a little taste of that during Libra season where everyone was kind of like losing their mind.
Facts. That was definitely happening. But I think like having that energy interact with each other, I have an exalted sun ruled by my exalted Mars. So yeah, those things are very loud. And having an exalted Venus, I feel like you feel that not, we have to remember Venus is also a very tumultuous planet in itself physically, as well as when it shows up in astrology. It's not this like beauty and love and everything. But yes, there's art, but art. I just watched a movie featuring Angelina Jolie of Maria Callas, and she said, art, songs and music is made from a place of suffering. And like this person, and I had to look at her chart. She had Pluto and Cancer, of course, and it's like everything was made from suffering, and it's like that's kind of Venus too. And I don't have to tell people that have, strong relationships with Venus that changing your style doesn't necessarily mean that your whole world changes. It's about changing the things about you to fit what aligns with your current self. It's not about changing to fit in. It's about changing to fit in with yourself. And that's what I feel like a lot of the exalted Venus energy is like finding your true self and not just like creating this character or this facade that you come off as. It's like embodying the dark, embodying the light, and finding your way through that.
February 1st, we have Venus conjunct Neptune, and then the North Node, same day, 27 degrees Pisces, 28 degrees Pisces, and then the moon goes over Neptune and the North Node and Venus on the same day. So
Whew.
big activations, 27 degrees, 28 degrees of Pisces, with that Venus Neptune moon on February 1st.
Damn. And that's like we have once again obviously the new moon in Aquarius at 9 degrees is going to be ruled by that Saturn, and then we have Uranus stationing direct at the end of January, and then we will be jumping into February. But like the Uranus stationing direct, I know that that has an impact on Aquarius. People can fight with someone else. I don't care. Uranus is definitely a planet attached to Aquarian energy. If you've ever met one or interacted with them, you know they are electric, innovative people. You cannot put them in a box. You cannot tell them what to do. You just sit back and watch them unfold. And so, in my opinion, having Uranus station direct, I feel like will be like a renaissance of Aquarian energy right before February. How do you guys feel about that one?
I put it as a time for trend setting for sure. Like, the Michael Jordans, the Floyd Mayweathers, Steve Jobs, Oprah, like all that type of energy. That's all Aquarians.
I love that. Michael Jordan with his Aquarius sun and Cancer rising was the most petty athlete. I mean, Aquarians don't get enough like respect of being the best athletes around because they can be so petty. But one ruled by the moon, whew, everything was personal.
Everything was personal. That's my favorite meme on the internet when he's like, and I took that personally.
They turned it into one for the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback, and it's just they're so similar, but like knowing that's what it takes to get to greatness, Aquarius are wonderful at reminding everyone of that. So if you are an Aquarian and find yourself shining a bit more at the end of January, you know why. So with that being said, we are going to shift into February, and we'll do that after I stop recording, and we're going to take a break.